there is bigger news, really across the NFL. I feel like everybody took the Tuesday day off to recover from the holiday, and then we get a flurry of quarterback news on Wednesday morning. The chief among them all is what's going on in Denver. Again, another team fighting for its playoff life, and we find out Wednesday morning it's not going to be Russell Wilson trying to get this job done. It's going to be Jarrett Stidham. I want to cover it all. There's a number of ways to
Yeah.
go with this. I mean, it's the second time in as many years that Jarrett Stidham has been in this situation. What's your first impression, I guess, when you hear this news that Sean Payton made this call?
I don't know if it's performance based or it's financially based. And it's one of those deals where, they are 1-3 in the last 4 games. And maybe this is the spark plug and trying to save the season. But the way that Russ's contract is drawn up, it's one of these deals where he's already made a ton of guaranteed money from them. But if he gets injured, it really complicates things on the contract side of it. So he has $37 million that becomes guaranteed if he doesn't pass a physical in the offseason. So God forbid he got hurt and then he couldn't pass the physical. He gets $37 million from the Broncos organization right there. In this case, Denver could hypothetically get out of that contract, either trading him or cutting him or doing something if he's healthy and passes the physical. So there is this sinister look of it as that it's a financial decision, not what's in the best interest of the team. On the other end of it, Russ was great. Russ had some good moments, had some big fourth quarter moments, but that offense has been sputtering for the last month, and they didn't sign Stidham for $1. He was like a $7 million backup. They spent real money on him, and I know when Sean Payton signed Stidham, there were multiple teams that were going after Stidham, and even when they signed him, there was buzz that maybe Payton, is inheriting Russ, and Stidham might be the guy that he actually wants to see on the field.
I mean, it's easy to forget, but again, Jarrett Stidham was in this situation last year when the Raiders essentially did the same thing to Derek Carr, and he did throw for 360 yards and 3 touchdowns in a loss to San Francisco, which it's wild the things your brain lets you forget at the tail end of these long seasons where you're like, holy crap, yeah, Jarrett Stidham did push the Niners to the brink. So maybe it's not completely unrealistic that he can give the Broncos some kind of lift.
Yeah, and he has no real history with Sean Payton yet. In free agency, when quarterbacks were all the buzz, they gave real money to Stidham. So I'm being Pollyanna here. I'm sure there's a lot more to this story than is being reported. I've known Sean very well for the last couple of years. He's been mums on this one. I'll tell you, there hasn't been a lot of buzz out of Sean, especially when you lose to the Patriots on national TV, one of the worst teams in football. But I think there is a feeling of, hey, let's see what we got here in Stidham. But also, I don't think you're wrong if you're assuming it's a financial deal. They're like, let's not just give $40 million away to Russell Wilson. Let's at least give ourselves some flexibility here.
I'm going to get way, way ahead of myself because why not, I guess. But I mean, you mentioned, I guess theoretically you could trade Russell Wilson. That seems completely unlikely to me, just with the amount of money you're talking about and what you've seen out of Russ since he became a Bronco. That leads me to believe he's probably getting released. Again, I am getting ahead of myself, but I don't think that's a hard dot to connect. And so where do you think this goes for Russell Wilson? Like I said this morning, it's hard to imagine a guy who has accomplished what Russ has signing on to be a backup. But it's also hard to imagine somebody giving him a major contract to start for them. Like, is Russell Wilson looking at a future of being like a bridge quarterback for a rookie? Or like, where do you think this goes?
It's so interesting. He's never had to be that guy. I covered their first training camp when he was a 3rd-round pick, and the late Travaris Jackson was there and Matt Flynn was there. And I was in Renton, Washington, when Russell Wilson was running circles around those guys, and he was crowned a starter day 1 of his NFL career. And now we're 10 years removed, 11 years removed. And I've never seen him have to compete for a starting job. I've never seen him be the veteran backup in the quarterback's ear because he's always been healthy. He's always been that guy. So, Baker Mayfield this year was kicked around a bit, from Rams, from the Panthers, from the Browns, and then signs on with Tampa. And it's like, it's going to be Baker or Trask. And he won the job, and Baker's been a great story. If Baker Mayfield can get a starting job, if Derek Carr can get a huge contract this past offseason, is there not another team that you think is going to say, all right, we'll take it on with Russ? The question is, do you want to take all that comes with Russ, which that sounds like it's negative, but you do have Super Bowl MVP. You still have Super Bowl winner. Do have a guy that's been an all pro. You've got all these things that go with it that like Russ might not necessarily want to fight for a job and might want to be the starter. And that might not be on the table for many teams this season.
I think Baker is the perfect comparison because what I mean, I don't know his deal off the top of my head, but I think Baker got like 4 or 5 million
Four
to go to Tampa.
million, 1 year deal with a bunch of incentives, and he hit them all.
Which I mean, yeah, no, few people are winning more than Baker Mayfield right
Like
now.
let me throw this out there. Atlanta Falcons, say they finish too good to be in the top 5 for a quarterback or top 10
Sure.
for a quarterback. Like I'm just throwing a team out that might be in the search for a quarterback. The Atlanta Falcons, the Washington Commanders, if they don't draft one. You consider, what are we gonna do in well, I don't want to in Minnesota if they walk away from Kirk Cousins, which I don't think they will, but he counted on one hand, man. It's not like there's 20 teams lining up for Russell Wilson.
No, yeah, I mean, I think your option is a very Baker Mayfield situation where it's like, okay, you can count your losses and be a backup somewhere, or I guess walk away, period, if that's what you want to do. Or yeah, there's probably like 3 teams where you could get a shot to go in and compete. It's strange to think about for yeah, like you said. I mean, Russell Wilson's been the man since he stepped in the NFL, but that seems like where this is headed.